I'm having insomnia again. It's like 1:30, and I finished putting a puzzle together tonight. Every once in a while I get the urge to put a jigsaw puzzle together, so I worked on that and got that finished. And then I thought I was pretty tired, so I got myself all, put to bed and everything. And after about an hour, it's like I woke up and now I can't get back to sleep. So I got a beer. I like Guinness Stout, the bitter one. Ate some crackers, and then thought, well, maybe I'll just make another little video. So the way I started doing YouTube was the very first video I made, I was just kind of testing it out, so I was living with this guy Steve at the time, and he had this cat, and the cat liked to chase those little milk rings. When you take the top off of a gallon of milk, you got that little circle thing that comes off of it. So she was a little tuxedo cat, and I would just sit and throw it, and she would retrieve it. And I thought it was the cutest thing, so I took a video of it. And if you watch the video, I'm actually sitting in the dining room, throwing the milk ring into the kitchen, and you can hear Steve talking in the background to his buddy, who lived down the street, and they're talking about their cameras. Their digital 35mm cameras. So, I told you he was a sociopath, so that meant that he had to control everything in his environment. And being there's a lot of things that go along with being a sociopath, and one of them is obsessive compulsive. So everything he did was, I didn't realize it until, I started noticing that he hung all of his shirts in the closet, color coordinated, and long sleeves, short sleeves together, and all of his shoes were all put down in the correct order, and all the shirts had to be buttoned with the top button. And he was a security network administrator at the business school here at UVA. And I met him on the internet. And the way that I met him was I'd been living in this really nice little cottage out in Ivy. It's about 10 miles outside Charlottesville. And I did a lot of gardening there, flower gardening. I grew sunflowers, and I got these mammoth sunflowers, and they grew to be 10 feet tall. And I'm glad I still have pictures. My sister took pictures of me standing in my, it wasn't really a field of sunflowers, but it was, this stand of sunflowers that I grew. And the flower heads were so high that I couldn't even reach them. So I got my farmer overalls on, and it's kind of a neat picture of me standing there trying to show how tall these sunflowers are. And let's see. So around the height of the real estate market, when the big bubble hit, it was in 2005, the people who owned the property decided that they were going to put it on the market. So there was a little 2-story house next to me, and I lived in a little cottage next door. And so they let us know that we were going to have to move, and they were gonna, fix everything up and sell it. So I usually, when I had to find a place to live, I would put an ad in the newspaper, and I would advertise myself as a professional single woman with a cat. I think I had 2 cats at the time. So I put this ad in the paper, and it usually always worked. Like I let them call me instead of trying to find a place to move to, because there's a lot of things available that you would never know about, because some people just really don't want to advertise their property, because then they have to answer all these people that come along and they want to be renters. So I put this out there, and then shortly after that, I got this call from this woman, and well, this is kind of a little side story, but she and her husband used to live in the house next door, and they bought a house farther down into the neighborhood, and they were living next door to this elderly woman that had lost her husband 2 years ago. And I'd lived in the cottage for 7 years, and I remember meeting her before she left, during the transition and everything, because everything was turning over at the same time. The house was getting new renters, the cottage was getting, a new renter, which was me. And so she said, this wasn't exactly maybe what I was looking for, but her next door neighbor, her name was Bernice, and she was 85 years old, and she and her husband had built this house like in the 1950s, and it was their dream house. And 2 years before, before this lady called me, Bernice's husband had died of colon cancer. So all 3 of her children wanted her to move to assisted living. But she had a downstairs that was a house kind of built on a slope, so the downstairs had big sliding glass doors and looked out into the backyard, and there was 2 bedrooms and a bath and a living room and a kitchen and everything. Well, no kitchen, that's right, there was no kitchen there. So this lady said that Bernice was thinking if she could get somebody to live in the house with her, maybe her kids would leave her alone and let her live in the house. Because, she was getting to the point where she was a fall risk, and, she didn't hear that good, and stuff like that. So I went to meet Bernice, and we hit it off right away. And then, so it just happened that her son was coming in from West Virginia for the weekend, so met him and his wife, and we all kind of had a little little family sit down, and thought, well, it looks like it might work out. And because I was single and didn't have any kids or husband, boyfriend, in the background or anything like that. So just the 2 cats. And so the agreement that we came up with was Bernice was desperate to learn how to do email, because she couldn't talk on the phone very good anymore, and she wanted to keep in touch with her grandkids and her family. And so I told her son that if he got a Mac, an Apple, laptop for her, I could teach her how to do email, because I only knew how to do, Apple products. So, because every time I tried to do Windows, everything was backwards, and I got real confused, and stuff like that. So anyway, he agreed, and so I got the wireless set up in the house. And so after dinner, we used to sit in the kitchen like a couple of kids doing their homework after dinner. And she would be, trying to type out her little emails. She had these real shaky hands. So, she would accidentally, hit a wrong key. And it would take her to an advertising site. And she would go, oh, and I would go, oh, just wait, and I'd go like back, back, back. It's like, okay, it's right here. You didn't lose anything. Don't worry about it. And so while I was, basically just companioning her, and just helping her when she needed my help, I decided that I was gonna, I sat at my laptop and I was reading message boards. Well, I got really tired of all the message boards I was reading, and so I decided that it had been about 5 years since I had gone on the personals, the internet personals. So I went to Yahoo Personals, and I looked up my age group and my parameters of who I thought I might be companionable with and everything. And I was really shocked to see how many people were out there, because when I was on it 5 years before, there weren't that many people. So like I said, this was like 2005. So I saw this one guy that looked kind of interesting, and he was kind of a comedian, type. He looked like he would be a lot of fun to just hang out with and joke around with and stuff. So you could flirt for free. So I made up a little profile. You had to make a profile, and then you could just flirt, and they could answer you back and that kind of thing. So I just answered these really stupid questions, just to make up a profile. Like my favorite thing to do is walk my cat on a leash, or stuff like that. My favorite food is like dark chocolate, whatever. And so the next day, I opened up the computer, and that particular guy had not flirted back to me, but there was like 5 other people that flirted with me. So at that point, I said, "Hey Bernice, I got to tell you what I'm doing over here. I'm doing the personals." She got so excited, you wouldn't believe it. She never knew anybody who ever did the personals, so she became my dating coach. And it was like having my mom, like help me like figure out who I should meet. So after a few days, this guy Steve showed up. And he created this profile that made like he said he loved to garden, he loved to cook, he was a musician, played the guitar, had everything he needed that he wanted in the world. He was set, with his own home and everything, but he was looking for a companion. So, Bernice was looking over the profiles, and she would say, "Oh, well, you're not going to like this one because, he doesn't believe in God, and, or you don't want this one because, he's too young for you," or, stuff like that. But then when she saw Steve's profile, she said, I think you might have something in common with this guy. Because, I always did all these creative things and everything. And so I'm probably going to have to make this into 2 videos because it's already 14 minutes. And because it is a bit of a long-winded story. So anyway, I'm going to shut this off here, and then I'm going to pick it up and tell you the conclusion to the story.